a lovely day in the Cotswolds. I've been out in the forest again. It's a lot windier and a bit blustery today, but the wild garlic is fantastic. It's everywhere, and I've picked some for lunch. I had an interesting exchange with a pal of mine yesterday, a chap called Paul Ramos, who's quite famous for his work as a wildlife vet on the National Geographic channel. Now, Paul is a nice guy, he's a very thoughtful guy, and he's starting to make a real impact on disaster recovery and looking after animals in desperate circumstances like we had recently with the bushfires in Australia. And he heard me talking about how it's important to get outside and experience things like the forest even when it's in this sort of weather. And he reminded me of the fact that humans are biologically predetermined to be outside, and that, as always happens with my brain, it seems, has linked me back to a brilliant book called The Moth Snowstorm. And in that book we are introduced to the idea that for 50,000 generations we were wildlife. We were running around like every other animal in the environment. And it's only been the last 500 generations, a couple of 100,000 years, that we've actually been these domesticated, inside living animals, seemingly separate from our environment. If you think about that, it's crazy that we lock ourselves in and we don't get out and we don't spend time with nature, because, you know, evolution doesn't happen in 500 generations. We don't change. We're fundamentally the same as we were those 500 generations ago. I spoke about this in my recent TED talk, and I think it's not getting back to nature, it's being in nature that I think we really need to think about, particularly when we're in a difficult time. But to be honest, that's almost a distraction. I think it needs to be something that we build into our days when we can. And when people are living in environments or working in workplaces where there isn't nature and blackbirds singing in the background, I think we need to think about how we can actually do that, how we can actually design our workplaces of the future that take into account that we were 50,000 generations as wildlife and only 500 generations as modern people living indoors. Wow.